Guys, the internet has deemed Mizuki to be the worst thing to happen since World War I. Seriously, no one likes you. I am unusually late to the party this time, admittedly partially because I was kind of uninspired by her kit and I wanted to cover something else first, but I finally came around making this video, so let's see if she's truly as unsalvageable as she seems to be. This video has been sponsored by Ugreen, which kindly sent me this multi-use charger. Specifically, I'm talking about the Ugreen Nexod Pro 65W Ultra Slim Charger. The main appeal here is that this thing can charge up to 3 devices at the same time. This feature can be useful in multiple ways. In your everyday life, you might want to charge multiple devices at the same time, and this thing gives you the capability to do so effortlessly. And of course, it being 65W makes it highly efficient at charging even the more modern devices. Through the single USB-C one to get the 65W max charging, it can charge your MacBook Pro 13 inches M2 from 0 to 51% in 30 minutes. It is both USB-A and USB-C entries, so it's pretty versatile in its uses, and as a result, it's especially great if you ever decide to travel somewhere. And that's the reason why it coming with different plug types makes it pretty much foolproof regardless of where you go. It's also relatively small for a triple entry charger. It can fit pretty much everywhere, from backpack pockets to pants pockets, so you won't ever have an issue taking it with you. Flat and ultra slim design, so it's easily tucked into tight spaces such as wall and gaps on a desk without taking too much space. So make sure to check out this Ugreen charger in the link in the description below. First of all, I want to say that Mizuki doesn't have the foundations of a disaster character. She has flaws for sure, but I can kind of see the logic in her kit, while I couldn't say the same about Dia back when she came out, for example. Essentially, Mizuki is an on-field anemo carry that actually plays to the element's strengths for a change. In fact, while she's not particularly impressive in terms of raw damage, she focuses on dealing increased sword damage, so she magnifies the only anemo elemental reaction. By default, that could be seen as a more logical evolution for anemo as opposed to carries like Xiao and Wanderer, who kind of strayed away from the course to be hyper carries instead. Since those characters didn't play to the element strengths, Hoyoverse had to release some massively strong supports which made them meta throughout the years. On the flip side, Mizuki, at least as a baseline, doesn't have an archetype that betrays her element, and that much I can appreciate about her. The problem is everything you find out when you analyze her kit more in detail. Mizuki can get sword-related buffs after using her elemental skill, which makes her float on the field and increases the damage of all the swords she triggers, essentially. During this skill, she will start automatically attacking nearby opponents with anemo damage, amounting to a quite sizable quantity of hits throughout a 10 seconds duration. The problem here, however, is that during this skill, she can't use normal attacks, and the skill attacks themselves don't count as normal attacks either. This puts her in a rather awkward spot from the eye of the players who throughout the years have been accustomed to playing Sucrose in the same role Mizuki wants to cover, with sub-DPS like Yelan, Fischl and Xinqiao in the background. So, characters that either relied on continuous normal attack execution to have any sort of impact, or at least benefited from it in some way. Mizuki, on the opposite, is a character that strays away from that course completely, and that's part of what generated the massive critiques about her kit. However, let me explain why I think her kit makes at least a little bit of sense from a design standpoint. Throughout the past few years, Hoyoverse has been slowing down at releasing characters that need the active character to do some specific things in order to deal field damage. The likes of Chiori, Yae, Ororon, Furina, Emily, and so on are all more flexible than the Xinqiao bait of the past. I'm assuming that Hoyoverse doesn't intend to diverge from that course in the future, and so as they release more sub-DPS like that, Mizuki's kit will start making more sense to more people. I believe this because when she plays to her strengths, Mizuki does have an argument over Sucrose in terms of playstyle. The sword damage being higher is a given, as Mizuki gets ample damage bonuses as well as having an elemental mastery bonus in her passive and in her Ascension stat, so she will just do more damage in general with elemental reactions. Beyond that though, the reason her kit makes some sense to me is her elemental burst. The burst deals some initial anemo damage, and then it will continuously create some cloud-looking objects on field that can have varying effects. If your active character is below 70% HP and steps on the cloud, they will get healed by an amount that scales off of Mizuki Elemental Mastery. If not, then it will just launch an anemo attack at a nearby opponent. The idea here is for Mizuki to never focus on attacking opponents autonomously, but rather on floating over these clouds either to heal herself or to deal more damage through the burst. The healing part is rather unique, because it will make her perfectly functional on a team without a healer, something that Sucrose has always struggled with. So, the idea here is actually fun and also makes sense from a design standpoint, but it's just that she lacks a sizable enough roster of characters to make it work. While in theory there are quite a few sub-DPS and don't need specific on-field actions to work, the problem is that, as a sword carry, Mizuki specifically wants characters that enable other strong damage reactions like Electrocharge, Overload, Quicken, and to a lesser extent some Vaporite stuff. As a result, her current possibilities are more limited than one would like them to be. Her not taking advantage of Yelan, Xingqiu, and Fischl at their best kind of blows in particular because these are the characters that have the best mix of damage and application consistency out of all the sub-DPS available to Mizuki. You could theoretically make the case to use her as an on-field carry without using her elemental skill, so to use her normal attacks like a Sucrose can do, and while that works, that's kind of whatever. It's really something that any unit with Anemo Infusion can do, and somebody like Xianyun, who is a healer first and foremost, can even do it better because she has better healing for the team to boot. I kind of ignored her healing potency so far, but maybe this is a good moment to talk about it. It's single target healing and it's not that high compared to units like Bennett or even Cookie. Moreover, the fact the active character is meant to move on the little clouds the burst creates makes it kinda awkward for characters that have to focus on hitting opponents during their uptime, and it's clearly something that is meant for Mizuki mostly. As a result, her viability as an off-field healer, for example, is much lesser than that of characters like Jin and Xianyun. When she's on field, her having healing is kind of cool, however, kind of makes her a self-sustained character in the way Nuvolette can be, for example, and considering that she doesn't have to focus on opponents while she attacks them, I can see a future where she feels kind of smooth to play. That said, her healing being only single target and only activating if she's below 70% HP creates a lot of anti-synergy with her best available support, Furina. With all likelihood, in order to use Furina on her team, she'll be forced to do one of two things. Either you'll have to use a second healer on team, which is a really sad scenario because it nullifies the inherent advantage of her having self-healing, or you can use Prototype Ember on her. She's a catalyst character, and so she can use Prototype Ember to alleviate the lack of synergy with Furina, considering that this weapon will heal the whole team when she uses her burst. It also comes with energy refunds, so it's not like it's bad for her aside from the team-wide healing, but it's at most a band-aid, and without a second healer on team, Furina won't work as well as she does on other teams. There is also a second issue in her kit. Her focusing more on reaction damage than Sucrose does is a double-edged sword, because a reaction damage like Swirl, Electrocharge, Overload thrives much more in AoE content than single target content. That's because Swirls propagate elements within a certain range and deal AoE damage while also triggering reactions with that element. In single target there is nowhere to propagate that element to, and so that really limits the amount of Swirls she can trigger, as well as the chain reactions like Electrocharge. Sucrose suffers from that as well on these types of teams, but in return she provides elemental mastery and damage bonus effects to allies, which increase the single target performance of the team. In comparison, Mizuki will struggle more in single target content because her reaction damage will still be on the low side, and she won't provide any of the damage amplification for allies. As a result, she's a character that more so specializes for AoE content, and in these scenarios, as more sub-DPS she likes come out, she'll probably outperform Sucrose in the long term, but for single target content, I think she's more limited offensively, but feels comfier to play, that kind of trade-off. For now, I'll stay away from team-wide calculations, because a lot of the chain reaction stuff with Electrocharge and so on can be quite messy in terms of who is triggering what, especially in AoE content and in pre-release. So for now I will be cautious. But for now I will say she's very mediocre, aside from the few scenarios that can accommodate her. And with this I'm done for today. If you enjoyed this video, remember to subscribe, go check the Citlali post-release guide I made a few days ago, and also check Ugreen out in the comments below. Bye bye!